The Launceston Podcast.
Days of romantic prose and lilac wine. Nights out under the sky, watching stars align. Days of making sweet honey, Melissa. As warm as your breath on my chest, so calm. Now, baby, let the summer breeze carry us away. Let the summer breeze carry us away.
Chase House and the Summer Breeze. Well, with that, welcome along to another edition of the Launceston Podcast, being recorded on Friday the 29th of May 2020. Well, in addition to some great music, our podcast today features around an event which occurred in Launceston back in the 1940s. It was over very quickly, but it was the talk of the town at the time, and it's now inspired someone who used to live in Launceston to write her first book on the subject. It's called An American Uprising in Second World War England, subtitled Mutiny in the Duchy. Here's Kevin Wadland to set the background to the incident which gave rise to this book as he prepares to talk to its author, Kate Warren.
In the cornertown of Launceston on September 26, 1943, the GIs had a big fight out and shootout like a Wild West in the corner square of Launceston. And I got a lady who's done a research actually, and I believe she's got a family down in the cornertown of Launceston, and she's moved away, but she's never forgot her homeland. She's written it down for the history, for people, for generations and children to know what it's all about, what it was like back in September 26, 1943 in the cornerstone of Launceston. Is that correct, Kate?
It's absolutely true. It was just 5 minutes when it happened, 5 minutes of shooting, but it left marks in Launceston. There are bullet holes today around the doorway of the White Hart Hotel, and also in the War Memorial too. So in 5 minutes they left their marks on the bricks and mortar of Launceston, but in people's memories too. And there are lots of people of my father's generation, he's now 81 and still living in Launceston, but they remember this very dramatic shootout. And for them the hardest thing was not finding out what happened to the men who were involved. It was the biggest thing. An old man said to the Mirror at the time, this is the biggest thing since the day of the smugglers. You know, and I think there was some exciting times then, but this was even more exciting. And the question in people's minds was, what's happening and what has happened to these men? And they never found out. And I think that was the really hard thing for the people who remembered the GIs very fondly.
And a lot of GIs, American GIs actually, was soldiers and troops, and they were actually put in Pellygillam camp, didn't they?
That's right. So there were two camps in Launceston. There was Pellygillam and there was Scarn, and Pellygillam, which is now the site, as you know, for the big shopping site in Launceston, that had African American soldiers, and Scarn camp had the white soldiers. And the fight on the 26th of September 1943 was a fight between those two different groups of soldiers.
They actually met in a fish and chip shop, didn't they?
They met in a fish and chip shop, they met in a pub, they were all over the town. And the way that the American Army, which of course was segregated in the Second World War, the way they dealt with this fighting, because the fighting happened between black and white troops whenever they encountered, really. And they had different pubs for different races, basically, so that they'd have different nights for different troops to go to them. But yeah, as you say, they met in fish and chip shops, they met in pubs, and there was always a bit of trouble whenever the two groups came into contact, especially when they were drinking, I think it's fair to say.
And they also did a lot of parades actually within the square, weren't they? Like Memory of Sunny today, but they also done parades as well themselves, didn't they?
That's right, yeah, so they did, and there's some fantastic pictures by the amazing photographer George Ellis, who was a national news photographer but moved to Cornwall for the duration of the war. And so we have these wonderful pictures that he took of a Wings for Victory parade in Launceston in 1943. And this was part of a national campaign for people to raise money for the war effort and to encourage people to buy bonds. So all the troops would come out in their finery, and there's some, as I say, wonderful pictures that Crescent Kernow, the amazing new archive in Cornwall, has very kindly allowed me to use for my book. And in fact, one of their pictures is the front cover of my book. And the reason I chose it is because it shows very clearly a load of American troops watching a show, but you see the segregation. You have the black troops sitting at the back, and then there's a gap, and then there's the white troops. And that was really the American army that came to Britain when they were training for D-Day.
Here in our North Cornish town, the Launceston Podcast.
I went down to the city with a suitcase in my hand, looking for a better deal and trying to find myself a plan. Roaming around the streets, filling up some useless time. And if I'd seen her then and there, I would have asked her to be mine. Ooh, something to talk about. Ooh, someone to dream about. I'm going home alone with only trouble on my mind. I've roamed the streets 1,000 times, but a girl is hard to find. I've learned my lesson oh so well. There's only one thing I have found. When nothing else remains to do, you should just stick to your own kind. Ooh, something to talk about. Ooh, someone to dream about. Ooh, something to talk about. Ooh, someone to dream about. Oh, waiting. Oh, waiting. Oh, waiting. Waiting.
Nicholas Jones, and from 59 to 109. Well, let's go back to Kevin Wadden now as he continues his chat with author Kate Warren, and Kate starts his second part of the interview by talking about a photo that's in the book.
There's a lovely close-up of the very beautiful square in Launceston, and as you so rightly say, you can see Boots in the background and Hicks. But of course, these were the windows that were shot up not 3 months later in this big gunfight. So they wouldn't have been very proud to be parading there come September 1943, but everything was very shipshape and all Bristol fashion
So
back in June.
people come into Launceston actually in the square. Look at above the shops now, by the wide arc, along that side of the wide arc. It's not really altered over the years, is it?
No, not at all. It's an amazing town, Launceston, and it's so rich in its history. And what's for me really interesting, as a little girl, you know, my dad is very proud Cornishman, very proud of the castle. We'd come and look at the castle.
Yeah.
But actually in every generation, in every period of history, there's something very interesting that Launceston had to contribute. And I feel for the Second World War, it was this gunfight, you know, that put the town on the map, but also reflected what was going on all over the country, where the American troops were, and when they rubbed up against the British.
Was it your dad's idea, actually, or Hara's idea to write this book?
Well, Dad, as I said, is a very proud Cornish man. He's a very good storyteller as well. And his family actually moved to London for the Blitz. So he was growing up, you know, with the bombs and the Blitz. And one of his great stories is when he remembers a German pilot parachuting into his back garden and his mum making a cup of tea while they waited for the local bobby to come and arrest him. But when they moved back to the southwest and they came to Launceston in 1947, he said the talk of the town was this gunfight. And I think it was that generation, they're all very, very interested because they grew up with the war. They're very interested in that period. And so he was always talking to us kids, I'm one of four, about this story. And his teacher, when he was a young boy, was Charles Causley.
Yes.
And I think they discussed it as well. And he took a great interest in my dad. My dad lost his mum when he was very young. And his dad remarried, you know. So my dad was a bit rudderless, and Charles Causley, you know, was very kind to him. And it's something they used to talk about. And anyway, we went to see Charles Causley as kids. And went up to the square as well. But my dad has always said, I really want to know what happened. It would be really interesting to find out what happened to the men involved in this gunfight. And I decided, my husband and I took some time off and travelled around America before we had children. We went for the first time to the south of America.
Yeah.
And I don't think before I realised how slavery had affected that country, how the Civil War had affected that country. And it was really then that I decided that when I got back to England, I'd try and find out what happened to those guys who came over, you know, travelled all that way to come and train to be part of D-Day, and what happened to them in this fight that happened relatively close to the actual invasion of Normandy.
Is there anything in the book actually about any of the GIs actually married Lancing girls?
No, that's another book though, I think, because there were quite a few, and quite a few of the girls went over to America. And I believe there's a Facebook group actually, which connects the GI brides from Cornwall. There were a lot from Cornwall because there were so many American troops based in Cornwall. So there were a lot of girls from Cornwall who went over. Some of whom had quite a tough time, I think, adjusting to life outside the duchy.
Straight from a party, we're all on a roll tonight. Women be sparky, all the men be dancing right, moving my body, clubbing feels so sweet. We turn and turn and turn again.
Tim Hurst there and Young World in My Heart. Well, let's go back to our interview now with Kevin Walton chatting to author Kate Warren.
There's several pages in this book, isn't there?
Yeah, quite big, yeah.
So it took you a long time. It took you, what, 2 years, 3 years now?
So the thing is, I've written it in between. I've got 4 children, as I said, and I started to research it between the hours of drop-off and pick-up.
Yeah.
Only about 5 hours, really, in the day. So it took a while to do. The writing took a while, but it was really the research. And luckily, there's so much. So the National Archives of America, a lot of the research, a lot of their documents, rather, are online. So that's something I could do any time of day. I could do that at home. And the National Archives, when we were living in London, we lived very close to Kew, and that was a great source of documents for the book. So it has taken the time, but I haven't been doing it as a 9-to-5 job. It's been more between the school hours and then the evenings and the weekends, and I've got someone else to look after the children.
Actually, in the Wild West shootout, actually, they was arrested, actually, and they wasn't actually tried in Lancing, was they?
They weren't. So there were many men involved in this gunfight. According to one of the witnesses on the stand at the court-martial, he said it was like the whole company turned out. In the end, 14 soldiers were tried, 12 privates and 2 sergeants, and they needed a really big courtroom, so they ended up going to Paynton, to their old police station. It's long since demolished, but it was in Palace Avenue. And it had an upstairs courtroom which was very big, and they needed that not only for the number of defendants, but for the number of people who came to watch the trial.
So it's one thing you've actually written down. A lot of the youngsters now don't know about today, actually, because after 1943, I mean, now look at the ones that's born now, and they've grown up, and they've got children of their own, they've left the town or stayed here, and if it wasn't for your father talking to you, would you be able to thought about writing that book?
No, well, I wouldn't. To be honest, I wouldn't have written that book if my dad wasn't from Launceston. I wouldn't have known about it. And I didn't even know that the American army was segregated in the Second World War. I had no idea. And I had no idea how the British reacted. And I was quite surprised, actually, because the British would always, generally, take the side of the African-American soldier against the white American soldier. In any dispute they saw, they would get involved, and they would always back what they saw to be the underdog.
I believe the fish and chip shop's still there today, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. And there used to be the other 2 great popular haunts. There were actually 2 cinemas.
Yeah, the Tower.
The Tower, and there was another one, wasn't there? Where was the other one?
The one on Mold Hill, 4th Street, wasn't it?
I think so, but anyway, they were very popular. There was the fish and chip shop and the pubs. There are lots of pubs that have changed their names since as well.
Yeah, there was Cotswolds.
And I've spoken to a very... what's been great about this project is being able to speak to so many people from Launceston who remember this, and it was their sort of memory of this that preserved the story, because otherwise it would have disappeared forever.
Yeah, there's Cotswolds, there's Parker's, and there's one right over the other side up in Westgate Street there. There was different sort of pubs, and like the Tower Cinema, and actually the old Flick House, they usually going down towards Tower Street there. A lot of people now, that was their entertainment. There were a lot of pubs around, and I mean, there was the Northgate pub, the Whitehorse, the Railway, there was Launceston Arms.
The Baker's Arms.
That was the Queen's Arms, and then that was the Queen's Arms. It was King's Arms, wasn't it?
That's it, yeah. All heaving, I think, at the time.
Yeah, there was also the, mainly a lot of people at Bell. They would have sort of, people would have ended down the Bell, and they would have gone to the Northgate, or they would have gone to the centre of the square, or they would have been able to drink where they wanted to drink. They found their own space to drink, didn't they? All friends.
That's right, and they used to, they liked the Westgate. That was a good pub that they went to, and in fact that was quite important during the time of the shooting. The landlord saw that trouble was coming, and he shut up early that night.
Is that actually in the book?
There was going to be a fight. Yes.
Programs just for you, the Launceston Podcast.
We used to hang around town pretty late. I spent the week thinking about our next date. It was easier then, so much easier then. Or like that time I picked you up outside of school. You said, screw my dad, I make my own rules. It was easier then, so much easier then. Take me back to those easy summer days when we stopped at nothing, babe. Yeah, we stopped at nothing, baby. They couldn't take us, they couldn't change us, they couldn't catch us if they tried. No, we didn't care at all about winter or spring or fall. We felt so alive, and girl, we were thriving on kisses and sunshine and mischief. Yeah, we had one of those things. We just had one of those things. I guess I've had some things to figure out, but now that I'm done, I'm full of doubt. Was it easy for you? Yeah, was it too easy for you? You used to say that you would always be mine, but you seem to be doing just fine. Now I think about you, I just can't seem to stop thinking about you. Take me back to those easy summer days when we stopped at nothing, babe. Yeah, we stopped at nothing, baby. They couldn't take us, they couldn't change us, they couldn't catch us if they tried. Now we didn't care at all about winter or spring or fall. We felt so alive, and girl, we were thriving on kisses and sunshine and mischief. Yeah, we had one of those things. When we stopped at nothing, babe. Yeah, we stopped at nothing, baby. They couldn't take us, they couldn't change us, they couldn't catch us if they tried. No, we didn't care at all about winter or spring or fall. We felt so alive, and girl, we were thriving on kisses and sunshine and mischief. Yeah, we had one of those things. Ooh, we just had one of those things. Yeah, we had one of those things.
Zetterberg and one of those things. Well, let's find out where we can buy this book that we've been talking about today, An American Uprising in Second World War England, Mutiny in the Duchy.
It can be ordered anywhere. I think it's, most bookshops. But with Pen and Sword, if you order, I think they've got a really good discount on at the moment, and they'll get it to you first. So, yes, Pen and Sword History Books, which is online, and you can always come through me. I've got a website, which is www.katewarren.com, and I can put you in touch with the right people who can get a book to you.
Is that your book out now already?
Do you know what? It's published. It's in the warehouse, but because of coronavirus, they're having trouble unstocking it at the moment. So it was meant to be out on the 30th of April, and they're hoping it to be out by the end of this month.
You mentioned D-Day landings in 1944.
So the white troops who were subject of the shooting, they were actually tasked with Omaha Beach on D-Day. They were the 115th Infantry.
It's not the only book you've written, is it?
Do you know, it's my first book. My background's a journalist. I trained as a journalist. My first work experience was on the Bath Chronicle, and I went to train with the sister paper in Watford, actually. Then I moved to making TV documentaries, and I've written this book and approached it as I would a TV documentary by setting out the timeline and then going to get the first sort of the primary evidence, go and have a look at the real documents to see what was really going on at the time.
Do you think this book will ever make a film?
I think it is a film. I think it's a film. But my background is, as I say, in documentaries, and I just know that if I was making this documentary, they wouldn't give me enough time to research it. So I just thought, if we're going to do anything with this, I want to get the facts right and spend that time in the archives, spend that time talking to people who remember, which I wouldn't have time to produce a documentary. From my experience, they give you a couple of months, and this has taken me probably 3-4 years.
You also spent a lot of time, actually, down on Greystone Bridge, didn't they?
Yes, and a lot of time on the moor, obviously training for D-Day, and a lot of them hated the moor. They found it, their toughest oppressor. And the weather they found quite difficult as well, I think, some of the Cornish weather.
Well, thank you again, Kate. Actually, a little bit about it. I know people will be interested in the Wild West shootout in the cornerstone of Launceston. A lot of people today wouldn't realise that it did happen in the square.
No.
Because a generation have told you, actually coming up, generation told you, and you've got to just put it down, put the pen to paper for people to read for history to come.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And I just think, to be honest, we need to honour the memory of the guys who were involved in this fight. We need to honour the fact of why they were fighting, because that's how history helps us move on. We understand our past a little more, and it tells us a little bit about who we were in 1943. How would we have voted? How would we have sided? And the fact that they sided with the guys who were oppressed, it makes me quite proud, actually.
And I know that you enjoyed doing that book, and I know that you've followed out your father's words.
Oh, it's absolutely right. It's been a pleasure and a privilege, actually. And as you say, the pictures are really nice. We've got some fabulous pictures by this photographer, George Ellis. Really nice shots of Joe Louis, the boxer, who came to come and entertain the troops in Bodmin. And they're real classy pictures. And also the famous photographer who's based in Launceston himself, John Line. I don't know whether you
I met John Line, yes.
John Line, a fantastic photographer. He's kindly allowed me to use several of his fabulous shots of Launceston. So, yeah, I'd recommend just flicking it through, if nothing else, just to look at the pictures. They're good.
Well, thank you, Sue, and I may see you soon, Kate. If you come down the corner of Launceston, we'll have a cup of tea.
Oh, whenever we can come down, whenever we can leave our houses, literally it's the first place I'm coming, and you're definitely on my list to give a call to. I'd love to do that very much.
Thank you much, Kate. Enjoy.
All right, my darling. Take care, won't you? Lovely speaking to you.
And to you. Bye-bye for
Bye
now.
now.
So it's a fascinating story then that's led to this book, An Uprising in Second World War England, Mutiny in the Duchy. It's by Kate Werran, and you can find out more on Kate's website. Werran is spelled W-E-R-R-A-N, so if you go to katewerran.com, you can find out a lot more about it. And if you buy the book, then I hope very much you enjoy reading it. Well, thanks for listening to this podcast. Hope you've enjoyed the music and the information we've had about this event, which occurred in Launceston back in 1943. We're going to play out on an instrumental piece here by Guy Trevino and friends, Good Times Ahead. Till the next podcast, take care and bye for now.
Launceston Podcast.